Welcome back to Video Talk. Today we have an extraordinary guest, Professor, Emeritus Professor of Photojournalism Department, San Francisco State, Kenneth Kobre. Hello, Kobre.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Welcome. I know that you're working on a special project, a new video. Can you tell us something about it?
Yes, I'm doing a project about epilepsy and how parents have to deal with this. And the thing is that 2/3 of kids that get epilepsy, they can be helped with drugs. But 1/3, drugs don't do any good. They don't stop the seizures. And the only way they know to stop those seizures now is to actually remove half the child's brain. And my story is about parents making the decision to remove half a child's brain.
How did you come up with this idea?
One of my students, many years ago, when she had her child, that child had a stroke in utero. And later on, the child was seizing and showing just seizure after seizure. And she had to find a way to try to stop it. She tried drugs, and they tried 18 combinations of different drugs to try to stop the seizure. It never did. So they wound up having to find a doctor and a hospital that can do this special kind of operation. It's called a hemispherectomy. It means removing or disconnecting half the brain. And so I had been following that story over many years.
It's a very difficult decision.
It is. When I went into the story, in fact, I thought I just couldn't fathom how parents could do this. When I finished the story, and I'm finishing it now this month, I've come to a very different conclusion. When children are seizing 100 times a day, and the parents can't stop it in any way, and drugs don't stop it in any way, they look at this operation as a relief. If they don't stop the seizures and they continue, the child will lose about 4 IQ points a week. And so you can see the effect of this going on and on and on. It's very difficult.
It's a very emotional situation for parents, but also for you as a videographer. How did you feel in certain situations?
Well, I think out of all the different stories I've done, I came near to tears listening to some of these parents tell what it was like. The only thing the operation can do is stop the seizures. So I have one example where I interviewed a child who actually is a champion chess player, and he's missing half his brain, whereas another child is not speaking. So you get the full range of what can happen, how this all can develop.
We can watch a trailer about this video.
Hey, boo-boos. Hi, my love.
When he stopped breathing and turned blue and didn't move, I thought he was in cardiac arrest. I was terrified. I was home alone that day with him. I remember slapping his chest, trying to get him to wake up. He wouldn't respond, and that's when I put him on the floor, and I started doing compressions to bring him back, and it took probably a few minutes for him to start breathing again. By then, I had managed to dial 911. I felt like our world kind of crumbled in that moment because we were so hopeful that maybe he didn't have brain malformations.
Thank you.
The answer to everything from every expert was, we don't know.
You know, it was just scary taking on the new norm, but it quickly evolved into, okay, so he gets sick a lot, and, you know, we feed him via tube, and that's just normal. In terms of the brain malformations, that didn't end up showing itself until 3 months later after he was discharged from the hospital. 5-month-old baby doesn't know how to wink. And it was specifically one eye. His life consisted of, a number of medications in the morning and afternoon and the evening, and then going in for EEGs.
It's 4 o'clock. This is the second one in an hour.
A family member would stay awake with him all night because he would be asleep, wake up and start to seize, so we want to make sure he didn't stop breathing. You're just watching your child seize, and there is nothing you can do about it. You're giving them all the drugs that physicians have prescribed, and you still watch them seize themselves into oblivion.
How discreet, how focused his area of seizure activity was, that was the tipping point for us. We thought he was a good candidate for this. So I've given us some X-ray vision where we can fly around his brain and slowly peel away the layers of tissue so that we can see the anatomy underneath.
His first neurologist, her actual words were, "If you touch this baby's head with a scalpel, it would be criminal." I think brain surgery, it is the most invasive possible surgery you can have.
Let's go back to you, Kobre, Emeritus Professor at San Francisco State. What did you do prior to be a professor?
Well, long before I was a professor, I actually studied experimental child psychology when I was a graduate student, first at undergraduate at Florida State and graduate student at Brown University. And then I worked with children for a few years, and then I became a photojournalist. And I worked for various newspapers and became a photo editor, and then eventually became a professor, and I wrote a textbook. And that's how most people know me in the world. It's called Photojournalism, the Professional's Approach. And it's now on its 7th edition. It's been out 40 years, and probably about 1 million copies now have been printed.
And also, you're writing a book about videography.
I am. So I'm writing the 2nd edition of my video journalism book. And it should be out in the spring of this year.
And then you followed your passion about videography. I see some of your equipment.
Yes, so I just wanted to bring along some of the equipment to show you and to show people that are watching how it gets done, what's behind the scenes. And the first thing I wanted to point out was that you can make a documentary with just an iPhone. You don't need more than an iPhone. In fact, and there's one little secret element to this. The iPhone and the other smartphones are absolutely excellent. They have tremendous sharpness. Their color is fabulous. I've often photographed with both the iPhone and this very much more expensive camera, the Panasonic GH6, and the iPhone. The pictures look absolutely equal, or sometimes even a little better. But I wanted to show you that the real secret of shooting with an iPhone is an iPhone was designed to be a phone. So the microphone works best when it's very close to the person who is doing the talking. So when you use an iPhone and you're away from the person, the sound is not as good. Therefore, what I use is called a wireless mic, and they're now tiny. And this is the sender. So now I'm in business, and now I have a wireless mic feeding into my iPhone. The person can move anywhere they want up to about 100 feet away, and you can still get very clear sound. And this is the real secret of using the iPhone, is to use the wireless mic. So you have to have both the sender, and then it comes into this, and it's here, goes right into the phone.
So in certain situations, certain conditions, it's better to use an iPhone then?
There are situations where it is actually better. Sometimes you can't get into a place if you have a big fat camera. Cameras, they don't want professionals in there, so iPhone can work out very well. The iPhone also, and other smartphones have another advantage. Sometimes they have wider lenses. So there's a wider lens on this than there is on this. So when I need really wide angle, I now use the two of them together at the same time. So I'm recording from different angles. I set up my iPhone to record, and then I set up my other camera. Now this camera is a full-fledged normal camera, but also a video camera at the same time. And this is what we call a shotgun mic. And this mic will pick up everything that's going on wherever it's pointed at. So you don't have to be quite as close. I usually use a combination of wireless. This is picking up the wireless, and this is picking up whatever's going on in the environment there. Now, this camera has some other advantages, of course, because it allows me to hold it up and I can turn the screen down. It allows me to get very low, and that's much more difficult to do with a smartphone. The other big advantage of this kind of camera compared to this, when you're outdoors and it's sunny, it's very difficult to use a smartphone because that light hits the screen on the back and it's hard to see what you're doing. It works great when it's overcast, it works great indoors, but it's harder to see. This, on the other hand, I have an eyepiece that I can use, and I can work when it's sunny outdoors. So it allows me to cover more situations. And in addition, this has a lens that comes off. And the smartphones now have multiple lenses, but nowhere near as long a lens as possible yet, as you can use on this kind of camera. Now, I must say that whatever I say today will be out of date by tomorrow. They will have longer lenses. They've actually designed zoom lenses for the smartphone. And the clever thing about the zoom lenses, they figured out a way to put the lens in parallel with the body of the camera.
So you use these cameras for all your movies?
All my movies are shot with these two. And I have a couple of them where I did it all by iPhone. And most of the time, though, I'm using this full-fledged camera here. One of the reasons is because I can use more sound devices coming into it.
Let's begin to talk about your videos.
Okay.
Anatomy of a TV news story. A single person who does it all from the rear of his minivan.
That particular story was done to be in conjunction with my new book, because what that story is about followed one news photographer, videographer, who works for Channel 5. Da Lin was his name. And I asked to go out on a random assignment with him. Whatever he had for the day, I was going to follow him around. And it so happens that the story he had turned out to be a fantastic mystery story.
We watch a video clip.
In the past, a TV news reporter might need not only a sound technician and videographer, but also a satellite truck to cover a news story. Now, the job has often converged into a single person who does it all from the rear of a minivan. Lin is a 20-year veteran reporter for Channel 5 CBS in San Francisco. He often covers the news, working as a one-man band. Lin pitched a missing person story to his editors at 9:30 a.m. on Friday. He was assigned to cover the story for that day's 6 o'clock news.
New at 6, San Francisco police are asking for the public's help to find a computer programmer who's been missing for more than a month. His family worries foul play could be involved. KPIX5's Da Lin spoke to his siblings who flew in from out of town to look for him.